Hi, welcome back to the Compliance Coach. Today, after Goa, we do a spiritual session on mindfulness. Why is that so important? I had a look in the numbers. When you look on burnout, the statistics are alarming. Roughly 68 to 89% of the professionals in the banking sector have been already exposed with the burnout. Now, how is that possible? What are the medications that are proposed and why mindfulness could be an approach in terms of helping us and even being a success factor? Now, in the words of the American professor on mindfulness, who is John Kabat-Zinn, success is not the result of a single action, but a mindful choice and made consistently over time. So we will learn here three main things in this session. What is mindfulness in general? Number two is, what is the impact of mindfulness on compliance and in the financial industry? And last but not least, how can you realize that in practice? Three tactical approaches to bring mindfulness in your daily life. My name is Ralf Ebert. I'm the compliance coach, 20 years of experience in compliance in the banking sector. I'm here to bring you guidance on compliance topics, thinking and impacting compliance differently. Now let's go into the basics of mindfulness. Don't be fearful that we are now doing a yoga or a spiritual journey. That will not happen. I just give you three elements on mindfulness that are quite important to understand the topic and why we can influence it and why it has an impact on us as compliance officer or even people in the financial industry or in every kind of industry that you're working in. Number one is really the being aware of the present moment. And that means it's encouraging individuals to listen to sounds, to feel that we get the breath of the wind, the moment that we are sitting in the office, talking to people, that kind of focusing on the moment, out of this kind of time passing and flying in our very stressful world by saying, hey, I take that moment in terms of really being with me. That's number one. Number two is very much related to it, and it's the non-judgmental observation. Meaning, whenever you hear sound, whenever you're listening to your colleague of discussing, very often you will find yourself by having already an idea like, this is not my type of thing, I would do it differently, etc. So we have already a certain opinion in the beginning of the discussion, and mindfulness invites you of being non-judgmental on it, but being an observer, so nearly like a third party. How we can apply that, you will see that in my third part. And the third part is the intentionality. It's the deliberate practice. It's not like, hey, I'm just for a moment into it. No, you need to work, especially in the beginning, in terms of getting into what they call the flow, but in this kind of mindful approach. Now, we can talk a lot about what are different ways of doing it. I give you just only my personal opinion on this one. The way of how you start your morning will determine the quality of your day. What do I mean by that is, meaning if you give yourself the time in the morning to do gratitude, meditation, sport, already breathing, etc., that will help you already coming with a mindful approach into work and already with a de-stressed presence, and you will immediately feel that. And give you another example. My employees always ask me, Ralph, what did you have for breakfast? And the stupid reason is sometimes I even do not have breakfast, but I'm coming already with a good energy into the work because I apply mindfulness straight from the beginning. So on these basics, we have already quite interesting benefits, and that is for everyone. It has nothing to do with the financial industry, but as you know me, I always try to give you the kind of research-driven data and then the impact, which is sometimes based on emotional intelligence. So I have called it the CEREC approach. Wow, once again, very highly medical approach on this one. It's very easy. Number one is cognitive clarity. What do I mean by this? Is normally mindfulness helps you to focus on specific problems and not being completely diluted in the way of how a day works and how very often questions are asked, emails are coming in. So that's number one, the cognitive clarity for really treating your daily business and your task. The second one is, and a lot of people will now smile, emotional regulation. What do we mean here? It's with regard to the non-judgmental observation that we just mentioned in the beginning. It helps you to stay out of the direct approach and being too emotional about your colleagues, the topics, because it's getting you already back to where you have been. So it gives you the opportunity to observe that and even to build you a better opinion, and certainly being open to listen to facts and other impacts. The third one is the resilience, meaning sometimes, especially we as compliance officer, we are always in the kind of resilience approach to resist the stress, to resist the elements that are coming up on a daily work, and still to be in a capacity to manage challenges. And the last one, the E and C, is the empathy and communication. And that means that mindfulness gives you as well the understanding of where is the other person coming from and what is the driver. And that is as well enhancing interpersonal relationships. And I think we have already discussed that beforehand, of how much emotional intelligence and the interpersonal relationships are part of a cultural approach. So these are the 5 elements, the benefits of mindfulness. By the way, some of you might remember my episode 10 on conduct risk, and why it's so important, because we focused at that time as well on the human part of the risk and why it has been such an impact, sometimes even for the downfall of financial industries. And I think mindfulness would have already at least eliminated 2 of these risks. If you might remember, number 1 is the cultural risk of how an organization is from a cultural and value point of view impacted, not only by the ethnic part in terms of where people are coming from, but what's the value of my company, how I see it, how do I define compliance culture, etc. So their mindfulness would have played already an important role. And secondly is the behavioral part. You might remember in terms of people reacting overconfidence that have really, for instance, in the LIBOR scandal, contributed to the downfall of a financial institution, and mindfulness would have certainly as well helped them. So we can see as well mindfulness as a potential element for reducing conduct risks in the bank. Now let's talk about the impact of the mindfulness in compliance, because as my boss would say, so Ralph, what's in for us? Do we get more money? Do we have less costs? Do we reorient our resources more intentionally and with a higher efficiency? So what's in? And I think it's a good question, even for, let me say, spiritual elements on mindfulness. But in my research, I came across 4 elements that are helping where mindfulness has a very important impact. And I think that's already something. Can it contribute to make your life happier? Yes, it can. People sometimes ask me, do you have a formula for the happiness? I don't. But I think if we are already coming to these 4 points and we see an improvement, and I can talk based on my personal experience within multitude of banks, then you have achieved already something. So the number 1 is the enhanced decision-making part, which means that mindfulness normally promotes greater focus and awareness in terms of analyzing complex questions. And I think who has already worked in compliance or worked with compliance know what I'm talking about, because regulatory elements becoming more and more complex, the questions, the expectations from clients becoming more complex. And normally with a focused, mindful approach, that helps already to break it down in different slots and provide, hopefully, even in a fast-paced environment, for a good decision. Number 2 is the improved risk awareness. When you practice mindfulness and who you are, what you are capable of, especially this value can cultivate a higher sense for and attention to details and where the risk is hidden. Once again, in my conduct risk session, we saw that the humankind is already a big part. The same applies, of course, for technical errors, failures, setups, etc. So here as well, mindfulness can contribute that risks are better identified or, and I think more in particular, better evaluated in the process. And we come to process later, why that is an important point. Third is obvious. It means, or it should be obvious, it leads to a better stress management. Because, I always try as well to invite people to join us in the compliance function, but there is an element on stress and pressure that we cannot deny. So if you are not made for working in a highly energized environment, compliance might be not a good element, but we should find as well ways to conduct our business better when it comes to tight deadlines, regulatory audits. I can talk about that. And keeping as well what we call the emotional balance inside. And then words like resilience come up. So mindfulness, as I mentioned it before, and can contribute to a whole kind of setup of how you function as a person. And that normally has already a very wonderful and important contribution to your stress management of yourself, your teams, and the bank. Last but not least, and we will see that as well in our 3 proposals to how to implement it. It helps to build up and to strengthen a better compliance culture. Why? Because the parts of accountability and responsibility, which are part as well of mindfulness, of being present, being aware, and taking as well the lead on these elements, they will as well promote the organizational values. And that is, I think, very important to provide, because at the end of the day, banks are operating always as a community and a community of values. And here, the compliance culture that is built upon mindfulness can already improve that element. So mindfulness does not only enhance individual performance, but also contributes to the overall effectiveness and integrity of the compliance function. I think that is as well one of the most important parts when it comes to how to integrate mindfulness in compliance. I think this part is the beloved part of my boss, because it's in terms of how the non-mindful financial industry has already generated huge losses and what are the impacts. And sometimes we look as well as we did before, and on the positive part, we are now going a little bit on the other side, meaning how a non-mindful behavior has impacted that financial environment. And I think we all have seen it over the last 5 years, an incredible impact, which was of course COVID related, but as well the post-COVID part of burnouts that we have never seen before. Symptoms of burnout, being overstressed, etc., had a huge impact, and I think you have seen it already in your own company. Now, if you're, and you know that I love that, do a little bit the researches on what are the estimations on the global impact on burnouts. It's hilarious. A study of the American Psychological Association, for instance, estimated that the US economy alone was suffering from roughly, attention, 500 billion annually just out of the burnout factor. Annually, not overall, not over the last 5 years, every year. Same conclusions, different approach. The Harvard Business School, quite reputable organization, suggests that the working place stress accounts for more of 8% of the national healthcare spending, meaning 190 billion US dollars only for stress. So you can see there is consistent financial pressure in this element, and the World Health Organization estimates based on their researches that depression and anxiety disorders cost the global economy $1 trillion every year. I think these numbers are quite impressive, and if mindfulness can already contribute to that, that's certainly something that we should elaborate and explore more over. What do you think? Yeah, now comes the practical part in terms of we have listened what is mindfulness, how is mindfulness could impact the financial sector, what are the downsides of not doing it. Is the fourth thing lacking in terms of what do I do now in my daily life to make that happen? And here again, there are wonderful books out there in terms of starting breathing classes, etc. I had my personal experiences in this one. I can only tell you, if you come up with this kind of an open, mindful approach within the bank, colleagues are normally hesitating in terms of participating. We have seen other examples. Colleague of mine, for instance, has started, she's yoga teacher, has started as well to give yoga teacher classes within the bank, and suddenly people are moving and are coming and getting the benefit out of it. Now, should we all start yoga? Might be not, so we should look for elements that we can integrate in every life and integrate with regard to what everybody wants to do and wants to participate. So whatever is the kind of the reaction that we await from the colleagues by imposing things, forget immediately about that. So I have, in the huge number of proposals that have been already discussed in different books, found out 3 that I think are quite useful to be explored. And the first one is that based on mindfulness, we should as well focus to promote a culture where reflection and emotional well-being is valued. And that's very important, is in terms of where we talk about work-life balance, and where that is really put into the focus of the activity. Now, very often we have this finger-pointing approach by saying, yeah, but look at them and they should do better. What I have always learned is you need to start with yourself, and you need to start with your own organization. So, meaning, especially in terms of exploring the topics and to promote the culture which is behind it, you need to be your own role model. If you are not respecting your own rules, or the rules that you would see that everybody is respecting, nobody will follow you. So I think team leaders among the people that are here on this channel, they will know what I mean. So you cannot expect from your teammates that they behave if you are not as well already ready to go for the first step. And so that means as well to stand up for if values are not respected. So whenever you see, and I'm not saying about starting whistleblowing at every second, but it means supporting people that we think they're not treated correctly, or in a meeting where you find that somebody has been completely left out, even though that he or she had very good arguments that should be considered. So that as well is part of it, by saying, no, we should have a look to do it. And of course, if the higher you are in the ranking, the better is your position in terms of providing that element. And what I have learned always, it's Simon Sinek and Jay Shetty would love that, is listen to the others before you talk. And if you can, be the latest to talk. Why is that so important? Because it helps you to animate the whole discussions, to get all the facts as well as the opinions on the table before you do your decision-taking moment. And that as well needs mindfulness in terms of who we are, where the bank wants to go, and what is the best for the participants here in the moment. That needs, of course, as well to reevaluate the importance of compliance culture. And there's a lot of activities out there of how to doing this. When you have a look in one of my other episodes, I'm talking about how to write a vision and mission board. That's very important in terms of what are our values. And if you have defined your values, you can measure people against that. Not measure in the sense by saying, this is right or wrong, but you can say, guys, that's where the direction that we would like to take, and that is what we want in terms of an organization. That's part of it. Here as well, mindfulness is super important because it gives you the possibility to reflect about this and to take as well into consideration what is the essence of it, for what it serves. And that is without emotional, without pressure, without financial gains, but in terms of where do we want to go. I think Simon Sinek would say here, playing the infinite game. I think mindfulness is exactly about it. As we had heard that in the beginning on the quote, it needs time, and time should be not the trigger of it, but repetitive work on this one will bring it to the next level. And the third one will certainly surprise you, because it goes back to my other part that I love about the human touch of compliance, but as well technology, is the part of redesign processes and projects to reduce cognitive control. Why I say that, or better, cognitive overload, meaning our processes in the bank are fixed because our core banking system is built like that, and we try to build around a lot of other processes. Very often people get very frustrated because their resources and their capabilities are completely lost in translation, because you have to fill out 4 Excel files, writing 500 emails a day for honestly contributing only very less. So I think mindfulness should bring us as well in terms of which processes are really important and which processes we should better rely on, enhance and emphasize, and to bring more as well, for the individuals, more fulfillment in what they're doing. And if you do this, you will see, even if it's what we call low-hanging fruits in a process, that will help people by saying, hey, we are taking a step forward within the process. So, and that, I think, whether it is leveraging automatic solutions within the budget, I know the CFOs listening here as well talking to that one, but enabling employees as well to participate in that by saying, hey, boss, I think we should do this one because I lose here 50% of my time, and honestly it's useless, and there could be much more mindful as well as valuable creation and elements created here that could contribute to the profit and the better being of the bank. So that was it in an essence. We have talked about mindfulness. I hope that you find here something that you can implement in your daily work life. If you have any ideas, feedback, let me know. Don't forget to push the subscribe button or just let a comment. My name is Ralf Ebert. I'm the Compliance Coach, thinking and impacting compliance differently. Hope to see you soon. Bye.